dark and very slim, with the slimness of steel wire. He passed down the aisle rather uncertainly. A traveling man, Fanny thought, dropped in, as sometimes they did, to say Kaddish for a departed father or mother. Then she changed her mind. Her quick eye noted his walk, a peculiar walk, with a spring in it. Only one unfamiliar with cement pavements could walk like that. The Indians must have had that same light, muscular step. He chose an empty pew halfway down the aisle and stumbled into it rather awkwardly. Fanny thought he was unnecessarily ugly, even for a man. Then he looked up and nodded and smiled at Lee Kohn across the aisle. His teeth were very white, and the smile was singularly sweet. Fanny changed her mind again. Not so bad looking after all. Different, anyway. And then, why, of course! Little Clarence Heyl, come back from the West. Clarence Heyl, the cowardy cat. Her mind went back to that day of the street fight. She smiled. At that moment Clarence Heyl, who had been screwing about most shockingly, as though searching for someone, turned and met her smile, intended for no one, with a startlingly radiant one of his own, intended most plainly for her. He half started forward in his pew, and then remembered, and sat back again, but with an effect of impermanence that was ludicrous. It had been years since he had left Winnebago. At the time of his mother's death they had tried to reach him, and had been unable to get in touch with him for weeks. He had been off on some mountain expedition, hundreds of miles from railroad or telegraph. Fanny remembered having read about him in the Winnebago Courier. He seemed to be climbing mountains a great deal, rather difficult mountains, evidently, from the fuss they made over it. A queer enough occupation for a cowardy cat. There had been a book, too, about the Rockies. She had not read it. She rather disliked these nature books, as do most nature lovers. She told herself that when she came upon a flaming golden maple in October, she was content to know it was a maple, and to warm her soul at its blaze. There had been something in the Chicago Herald, though, oh yes, it had spoken of him as the brilliant young naturalist, Clarence Heyl. He was to have gone on an expedition with Roosevelt. A sprained ankle, or some such thing, had prevented. Fanny smiled again to herself. His mother, the fussy person who had been responsible for his boyhood reefers and 2 shiny shoes, and his cowardice too, no doubt, had dreamed of seeing her Clarence a rabbi. From that point Fanny's thoughts wandered to the brave old man in the pulpit. She had heard almost nothing of the service. She looked at him now, at him, and then at his congregation, inattentive and palpably bored. As always with her, the thing stamped itself on her mind as a picture. She was forever seeing a situation in terms of its human value. How small he looked, how frail, against the background of the massive ark with its red velvet curtain. And how bravely he glared over his blue glasses at the 2 Aarons girls who were whispering and giggling together, eyes on the newcomer. So this was what life did to you, was it? Squeezed you dry, and then cast you aside in your old age, a pulp, a bit of discard? Well, they'd never catch her that way. Unchurchly thoughts, these. The place was very peaceful and quiet, lulling one like a narcotic. The rabbi's voice had in it that soothing monotony bred of years in the pulpit. Fanny found her thoughts straying back to the busy, bright little store on Elm Street, then forward to the Haynes Cooper plant and the fight that was before her. There settled about her mouth a certain grim line that sat strangely on so young a face. The service marched on. There came the organ prelude that announced the mourner's prayer. Then Rabbi Thalmann began to intone the Kaddish. Fanny rose, prayer book in hand. At that Clarence Heyl rose too, hurriedly, as one unaccustomed to the service, and stood with unbowed head, looking at the rabbi interestedly, thoughtfully, reverently. The 2 stood alone. Death had been kind to Congregation Emmanuel this year. The prayer ended. Fanny winked the tears from her eyes almost wrathfully. She sat down, and there swept over her a feeling of finality. It was like the closing of Book 1 in a volume made up of 3 parts. She said to herself, "Winnebago is ended, and my life here. How interesting that I should know that, and feel it. It is like the first movement in one of the concertos Theodore was forever playing. Now for the second movement. It's got to be lively, fortissimo, presto." For so clever a girl as Fanny Brandeis, that was a stupid conclusion at which to arrive. How could she think it possible to shed her past life like a garment? Those impressionable years, between 14 and 24, could never be cast off. She might don a new cloak to cover the old dress beneath, but the old would always be there, its folds peeping out here and there, its outlines plainly to be seen. She might eat of things rare and drink of things costly, but the sturdy, stocky little girl in the made-over silk dress, who had resisted the devil in Weinberg's pantry on that long ago Day of Atonement, would always be there at the feast. Myself, I confess, I am tired of these stories of young women who go to the big city, there to do battle with failure, to grapple with temptation, sin, and discouragement. So it may as well be admitted that Fanny Brandeis's story was not that of a painful, hand-over-hand climb. She was made for success. What she attempted, she accomplished. That which she strove for, she won. She was too sure, too vital, too electric for failure. No, Fanny Brandeis's struggle went on inside, and in trying to stifle it she came near making the blackest failure that a woman can make. In grubbing for the pot of gold she almost missed the rainbow. Rabbi Thalmann raised his arms for the benediction. Fanny looked straight up at him as though stamping a picture on her mind. His eyes were resting gently on her, or perhaps she just fancied that he spoke to her alone as he began the words of the ancient closing prayer. May the blessings of the Lord our God rest upon you. God bless thee and keep thee. May he cause his countenance to shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. May God lift up his countenance unto thee. At the last word she hurried up the aisle and down the stairs into the soft beauty of the May night. She felt she could stand no goodbyes. In her hotel room she busied herself with the half-packed trunks and bags. So it was, she altogether failed to see the dark young man who hurried after her eagerly, but who was stopped by a dozen welcoming hands there in the temple vestibule. He swore an inward "Damn!" as he saw her straight, slim figure disappear down the steps and around the corner, even while he found himself saying politely, "Why, thanks, it's good to be back," and, "Yes, things have changed," all but the temple and Rabbi Thalmann. Fanny left Winnebago at 8 next morning. End of chapter 8.